Daniel from Victoria, British Columbia. Welcome to the show with Ethan Mitchell, the world's best semi-Catholic PG-13 podcast. Better than the one with the Australian guy, the wrestler, or the priest. So, welcome to the show. You can watch the show online at YouTube or Facebook. Subscribe and Apple Podcasts. And support the show at patreon.com/the show. Please enjoy 60 minutes of Edmund and his friends drinking Topo Chico on the glass bottle.
You staying home tonight?
I hadn't planned on it, no.
Plan on it.
Minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery.
You're gonna die.
I'm Raymond Arroyo. We'll see you next time.
Ryan, thanks for being on this show. I think I first came across you. I think I've seen you a little bit online, but I think the big thing was the Roe versus Wade video that we had recently, or that you made recently. And I think I kind of reached out to you, and you've been in the trenches for a long time. You've been in ministry for a long time. So thanks for coming on the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you because sometimes I get this intuition, this gut feeling like, man, I really want to talk to this person. Your video, I really appreciated the video. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, but for listeners who are unfamiliar, for my mom, hey,
and my mom
hold on
too,
1 second.
well, although she's familiar with stuff, yeah.
Hey, Dominic, can you go back in the other room?
Okay.
Ryan, you asked for kids to be involved here.
I'd love to see them.
No, don't wait. No, don't wait. Go in the other room. Okay, for our listeners at home who are unfamiliar, our millions of listeners, could you give people like a little intro on you? Where are you from? What you're about?
Yeah. So my wife and I, we just celebrated 20 years of marriage last November, and
nice.
We live here in West St. Paul, Minnesota, with our 4 sons, 17, 14, 13, and 12.
Wow.
We were foster parents and adopted kids through foster care. So that's kind of the journey there. But for the last 10 years, I've been working for St. Paul's Outreach in a bunch of different roles, but most recently and currently I'm the content director for SPO. And but previous to that, my wife and I had experienced a call to serve college students and young adults. And we were a part of the founding of a group called Youth Arise North America in Tempe, Arizona in the early 2000s. But we first met and where we got married was at the Newman Center at the University of Missouri. We were both graduated. She was working on a master's. I was the campus minister, but we were at the University of Missouri Newman Center. And that was where I sort of experienced, or that's where I started in campus ministry in summer of 97, and have been working with college students and young adults ever since.
So what got you into campus ministry, or what was your? Were you raised Catholic?
I was. Yeah. In fact, my mom, who will probably be listening, hi Mom. She was a religious sister for 15 years of her life, and discerned a call, and I'm grateful, out of the convent. So she was a liturgist, organist, and so I literally grew up in church, and so grew up and was born and raised Catholic, and in that whole kind of world, Catholic school all the way through high school, but then ended up at William Jewell College near Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay,
and that's really where I experienced kind of my adult conversion.
Yeah,
was in that context. It's not a Catholic college. It's a formerly Baptist college.
Yeah.
So I was evangelized by kind of evangelical Protestants, and thankfully they never encouraged me to leave the church.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any reason to look elsewhere, and just continued to pursue Catholicism.
What was
at
it
that point?
What was it that was the kind of conversion moment, or what was kind of the spark of that? Was it some type of event, or group of people, or?
It was both, actually. William Jewell was interesting because it's sort of socially, or at least I don't know if this is really still true, but it's a small campus. It was about 1,200 students. I had a fantastic experience there, but it was kind of socially segregated in that there was this sort of strong Greek system, fraternities and sororities on this small campus, and then everybody who kind of wasn't in that world. And I was in the kind of the Greek world, and yet there were a lot of and there weren't too many kind of strong Christians in that world, but there were a lot of kind of strong Christians who were not in that world. And you'd sort of look over the social tracks, if you will, and just you could experience sort of a life and a vitality that this group of Christians had on campus that I just didn't see anywhere, and I really hadn't experienced growing up as a Catholic. And so their joy, their freedom, just the way in which they lived their life was really attractive. And there was a guy who just pursued me and just kept inviting me to things, and I kept saying no to those things. And 2 or 3 years went on, and he ended up inviting me on this retreat. And I had remembered I had some cool or kind of strong retreat experiences in high school. And I sort of knew that was the right time in life. I felt like it was time to take a step like that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took a risk on that. And that was where I heard the gospel proclaimed for the first time and really saw that Jesus was supposed to be the most important or much more important than he was in my life. And that began a process of conversion that I'm still kind of digging into today.
Wow. What were the type of retreats that you went on as a high schooler? And how were those different than the college ones? Or that college?
Well, the high school one, I went to Creighton Prep in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's a Jesuit high school. And they would do, well, I think they called it like junior, it was like the encounter. I mean, they called it the encounter retreat. They'd be like talking about encounter before everybody else was talking about encounter. This is
naming,
like
naming all of their ministries and events encounter.
Right. That was like the late '80s.
Yeah.
And so I had a really profound experience there. And actually, probably the most profound experience of it that weekend, like in high school, was a priest for the first time helped me make a true, full, and sincere confession. Like he kind of walked me through, like, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
And I still to this day, even literally today, I went to confession today, and I'm still using this sort of model. But he just had me reflect on the 7 deadly sins, and just kind of walk through each of those and kind of prayerfully reflect on where those are taking root in my life. And anyway, so that was I had never experienced the grace and the freedom that could come from sacramental confession.
Yeah.
So that was huge. But then in college, it was different. It was just more like talks and small groups and that sort of thing. Whereas the other one was, they did these things like, your parents and all your friends, parents or friends of your parents or whatever, and your aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, they like write you those letters.
Yeah.
And for a kind of affirmation junkie, that really spoke to me. And that was a really, I don't know, it sounds kind of cheesy now, but I think I experienced kind of something of God's love for me,
Yeah.
But that's all in high school. So there was none of that kind of shenanigans at this college retreat, but it's a great thing. It just, but it's just more like, here's the gospel and we need to respond, and we're going to help you make that response. And, but probably the most important thing that happened was I got involved in a men's group.
Yeah.
With these guys who are kind of on, like I said, on the other side of the social tracks. That was in college. And it was in that men's group that I learned to pray, and I learned to kind of take a look at sin in my life and begin to try to root that out. But this is all outside of the context of the church. I went back to Mass and went back to confession and started making that a regular habit. But I was still kind of in this Protestant world while I was going to the Catholic Church. And it was after college that I experienced this kind of call to ministry.
Yeah, it's so important, man. Like, I'm realizing more and more as I get older, communicating with different friends and also like in ministry and thinking about this a lot. I used to there's such an emphasis on, sometimes in the past, there's been such an emphasis on community, and sometimes over and above, maybe even sometimes the gospel or catechesis or those things.
Yep.
And I would always like, community events or like community stuff. I kind of like, but the idea of surrounding yourself with people that are gonna influence you. I'm realizing more and more as I get older that it's like so hard. It's so hard for people to have no one in their life that is also trying to pursue whatever the thing is that you're trying to pursue, whether that's, excellence in sports or more importantly, excellence in the spiritual life or holiness or even just trying to figure life out in general. Like if you're going through a phase of skepticism, like to surround yourself with people who are going to be seriously skeptical, and because you'll just put it off. You'll just put it off you'll just be like, well, and then you'll never make any movements or so it sounds like in college that was really important. It was like suddenly you're making a decision for yourself. That's a new stage, but then you're surrounded by other people who are trying to make that decision.
Right, because what was happening was, I was living, I didn't like move out. I lived in the fraternity house until I graduated. And that place wasn't helping me spiritually.
Yeah.
But these guys I would meet with every Sunday night. And I was pretty honest, like, talking about drinking and whatever else. And, it was like Wednesday, Friday, Saturday night. That was like the nights to do that. And I'd show up on Sunday still kind of in kind of both worlds,
Yeah.
And these guys didn't sort of reject me with that. And they just continue to kind of accept me and love me and kind of continue to kind of call me forward. And I don't know, maybe you've heard Andy Stanley says something like, again, kind of cheesy, but I think it's true. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And I think it's true. I think if it wasn't for those guys, I don't know if it would have taken, if the conversion would have really taken root.
Yeah.
And those guys helped me kind of be the bridge to get to post-college. And then I could begin seeing some things differently, and had some other encounters as well with the scriptures and with other Christians, and a vision for life beyond just kind of the college thing that was really, really important.
So what was the moment when you decided that you wanted to get involved with campus ministry? I mean, what did you major in college?
Well, I was gonna be a social studies teacher, like teach high school.
Interesting.
And then they have you like, what is it, like you're like shadowing I wasn't a student teacher, but I was like shadowing it was like a middle school, like secondary education would be like 5th grade to 12th grade.
Yeah.
And when I thought like secondary education, I was like, I'm going to teach high school. Well, they stuck me in like a middle school classroom, like in the back. And I'm like 3 days a week just going, this is terrible. Like I never, ever, ever want to do this.
Yeah.
And I just decided, well, I remember actually I had like some kind of required class for that major, and I like didn't want to do the assignment. So I'm like, I'm dropping that major. Yeah. Therefore I'm not doing this assignment. So anyway, I just became a history major. So I graduated with a degree in history. But it was actually an experience where sort of this call to ministry happened so I graduated from college in 1996 and went to the Olympics, with 3 or 4 of my kind of close friends from college. And we spent a month in Atlanta in 1996.
Oh, nice.
We had a job with SPO, and they paid us a ridiculous amount of money to just basically do nothing. We ended up actually trying to kind of like hawk Speedo gear in downtown Atlanta, but there wasn't like a lot of Olympic kind of traffic. It was like a lot of people like kind of downtown inner city Atlanta. And we were experiencing all sorts of, the poverty and homelessness. And we were there with it was ridiculous. It was
you're there like
bright,
you're there like
white,
buy a Speedo.
buy a Speedo, buy a goggles. I mean, and so, I mean, there was all sorts of things that went down, but, the long story short, there was this encounter that I had with a person who was, was asking for help. And I won't go into the whole story, but it was in that encounter that I walked away from it. And kind of for the first time, I opened my heart to, the scriptures say that, whatsoever you do for the least of mine, you do unto me. And that was the experience I had was what I experienced serving and kind of encountering Jesus in a really profound way. And as I walked home that night, I had this sense, it wasn't an audible sense, but just a sense that Jesus was calling me into a life of ministry. And then that began a discernment process of like, well, okay, I'm open to that. I love that. Where will that be? With whom? And I was working at my alma mater. I was an admission counselor. I was helping college students make decisions about college, I was helping high school students make decisions about college. And they had this thing called Serve and Celebrate. I don't know why I still remember the name of it, but like we all went to do, like there's like the staff and the students spent a whole day serving at a bunch of different places. Then we had like this big like dinner and party afterwards. And I remember in the experience of that dinner was like, this is what I would want to do for the rest of my life. I'd want to serve with college students and celebrate what we're doing. And that was where I kind of knew that would be where I wanted to pursue. And an opportunity came up to serve at the University of Missouri Newman Center later that summer. Hey, buddy.
You gotta go into the room, bud. Sorry.
That's awesome.
Wait, so that's when you decided to serve at the Newman Center when that opportunity came up. Got it. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, I was like, the Lord says like ministry.
Yeah.
I was like, that could be anything. And so then just kind of became clear it was going to be with college students. And yeah.
So were you dating at the time or no?
No.
You gotta go either in the other room or outside, okay? All right.
So no. In fact, I wasn't dating at the time and kind of took a year off of dating altogether to kind of answer this question of what sort of ministry would the Lord invite me into.
Yeah.
And, but about a week after I arrived at the Newman Center, that's where I met my wife, Jill. So she was a grad student and she was serving with Life Team. So it was like a university parish. There was campus ministry, but also, families and, youth ministry and religious ed at this parish.
Yeah.
And so she was a volunteer with Life Team. And I was just glad I wasn't sure if she was a college student or post-college or high school. I was just glad she wasn't high school or college.
Yeah.
So, but that's how we met. So we met about a week after I arrived and we were married about a year and a half later.
Nice. Yeah. There are a lot of people, I think, my intuition is that there's a lot of younger folks that listen to this podcast who either are in college or just got into youth ministry or something like that. And I know that the discernment of ministry can be difficult for a lot of people. I mean, it was difficult for me, and not difficult. It's a lot. Like discerning: do I want to work for the church? Can I do this? Is this a valid, career path? And then also some of the guilts, like the guilt feelings, right? Like, so maybe I hear a lot. My parents are just want me to get a real job, or there's the pressure, especially when you're young, when you start, people are like, okay, so what's your plan like after this? And then the guilt, sometimes I would feel about like, well, maybe this urge to get into ministry and serve the church full time, maybe that should have been, because we're guys, maybe that should have been a priest thing. Like maybe I should have discerned more seriously the priesthood. But how, I don't know if, I think people would benefit from hearing us kind of unpack that a little bit, like what that call to ministry like means, or like working as a layperson in the church, at least in America, the way it seems right now, it feels new. It doesn't feel like, feels like it's still an emerging field. And sometimes that's church ministry, it could be organizations and stuff like that. And it's still very new, and there's still a lot of people that have no clue that it's like a viable option, or how to go about discerning that, or if that's okay. Did I tell you that I called Franciscan University because the only thing I knew, I just knew Scott Hahn books, and I like called Franciscan University and I was like, I think I want to be Scott Hahn, and they were like, that's not a career path.
That's not an option.
Yeah,
that's not a career
and I was like, okay, well,
it was for him. I mean,
yeah, that's true. True.
Wait, so that's how you ended up at Franciscan?
Yeah, so like I just knew I wanted to get involved. I didn't know that ministry full time was necessarily an option. I knew that some people did it, but it just felt like all you're seeing is these big, some big Catholic speakers. So you're like, okay, well,
sure,
maybe that's a possibility. But theologian felt like more like a career path. So I was just like, okay, well, if I did the Scott Hahn route, then I could somehow like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like theologian maybe, or like somehow working in the church in ministry. I didn't understand. I didn't know. And I was not exposed to a lot of very large Catholic like youth ministry programs or anything. So I didn't, my only experience of working for the church was like seeing very, very old women kind of like working at very small parishes. So I was just like, okay, maybe this is like a retirement thing. Like, I don't understand. I want to do something. And that's when the admissions counselor, Jamie Gonzalez, awesome guy, he talked to me about the major catechetics and was like, here's a lot of different paths you could go with this route. If you want to be a theologian, you could go that route. And so as I started getting into the studies, then I was like, okay, theologian is not, I don't want to be in journal articles and like scholarly papers for the rest of my life. Like, it's fun to read a Scott Hahn book, but I'm not that academic person, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it is. I would say Life Teen as an organization opened up a lot of possibilities nationwide for people to think differently about ministry, but primarily youth ministry.
Yeah.
And so I would say that has made a significant impact. But then you would have like, okay, Life Teen is one model. And then you have like Steubenville conferences is another, where you kind of see people acting in a public way, lay people in ministry or something. But you're right. If you didn't come from kind of a strong youth ministry background, or you came from maybe a small parish where there wasn't a whole lot of resources, it's not something that is a natural kind of question that people would ask. Like, they might want to be a pharmacist or a banker or a teacher, you know. And I think for good reason, because it's not like there's a lot of horizontal and vertical options. Horizontal, like there's just a really small number of things you could do. And then vertically, there's only so many steps you can take in a church, maybe in an archdiocese, but that's a whole nother beast. So, organizations like Focus or SPO or some other organizations like that is beginning to show more options. But you're absolutely right. I felt the same way. I didn't know where to begin. Yeah. And I didn't have any kind of example either from high school.
And I think for a lot of people, anyone you meet, like it's rare to find someone. Like when I would encounter someone, like when I was in college and I would encounter someone that was a full-time campus minister, it was like a unicorn, like, oh, full-time young adult campus ministry. Like, that's crazy. And then you'd ask them kind of about their story and it'd be some weird thing. Like, I was in real estate and then the pastor, I was volunteering, and then the pastor was like, what if I hire you part-time? And so you're just like, okay, so obviously there's not like a path I need to go for this. So I think more and more coming, I look around at social media and I'm imagining what I would have perceived if I was in high school or college and could hear or see of people working for some of these large Catholic organizations. Looking at people as like, marketing directors and content directors and different missionaries and all this stuff. I probably would have been much more open to the idea a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm. Well, because what did you do right after? I mean, what did you do right out of Franciscan? Did you go into youth ministry right out?
So Franciscan? So I was at Georgia Tech for a year and a half, almost 2 years. in Atlanta for
Yep.
for my undergrad, and then I transferred to Franciscan. And then
Right.
and then when I was at Franciscan, that's when I got really, really focused on youth ministry. And then I graduated. 2 weeks later I got married, and then 2 weeks later we started our first job out in Toledo, Ohio in youth ministry.
Toledo, nice.
Yeah.
Well, so then, that's. I mean, well, in Franciscan, did you major in catechetics or?
Yeah, catechetics and
Do
theology.
they have a youth ministry?
Yeah, they have
specialization too.
Yeah, they have like a youth ministry focus. Yeah, so I got like dual degrees. And so while I was doing the theology studies, when we would do ones that were more focused on, exegesis and that kind of stuff, and we get really deep into the research, and you start getting a sense for what a theologian would be doing with their, it's like being a philosopher, right? It's like you're reading books, you're reading journals and academic papers, and you're just super steeped in like 2 lines out of Isaiah. It's just and it's just some people are really called to that, and I was like, oh man, definitely not that. It was definitely being with people, being creative, coming up with ideas, figuring out how to solve this huge vision focused challenge. So for me, that
Absolutely.
was. And then the other thing, honestly, was when I started coming across more and more lay men and women who had families that were very mission oriented. They're very, they were working for a church, and their whole family was supported by that. They're not getting rich on it, but they were supported. Like they had just made a decision to be this idea of being a missionary in America. Like they worked for a church, and they opened their family to this community, and they were just in it for the long haul. And that was really what helped me discern that. So I think maybe even just, I'm trying to think of people listening, like if you just hearing these things and knowing that it's even possible is huge for discerning that.
It is. Well, I feel like it is possible long term, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's you have to make some strategic decisions about how you're going to navigate a whole host of things as far as providing for your family. And again, I do think that's changing, and there are many more opportunities, and it isn't just like I'm a youth minister or DRE at a parish. There are more and more opportunities to actually specialize in something along, administration or marketing or writing or, development or whatever it might be. But it is, you do have to make some, you have to sort of plan on some sacrifices that you and your spouse have to be on the same page about. Because I think to make it long term, you have to live, I think, within a particular means.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about that because ever since making that decision to, work at the Newman Center, like you've been in ministry in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you could say it as a primary, like your primary thing for the last 22 years has been ministry, pretty much, right?
Yep.
And that, that's inspiring. That's always been, not always, since Franciscan, that's kind of been the goal, is like, I didn't want to go anywhere else. That seems like in some ways the only prize that really matters is actually lasting, like actually making it, God willing. But I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about the difficulties of that, or like throughout that process of being in ministry for that long. Like you said, it's freaking hard.
It is hard because it's not only, I feel like I think the church is doing a better job of understanding what just wages should look like for its employees, and providing, full health benefits and just all the rest. But at the same time, there's also an incredible amount of demands on people's time. So that can kind of push somebody in a particular kind of way. There's often, lots of evenings and weekend commitments. And so you feel like you have to become an expert in time management and setting boundaries and living frugally. And like, I don't know, like it's this combination of kind of persevering through a bunch of different hurdles and obstacles. And I wish it didn't kind of feel like that, but that's been my experience. And we had a kind of an interesting turning point a few years ago. I won't go into all of the details because it gets into some of the stuff with my kind of family life. But when we adopted kids through foster care, it just provided a whole host of challenges, and it kind of forced my wife and I to look differently at work. And would I step back and could we take an even further kind of cut in salary so as to be able to stay home? And we were able to do that about 5 years ago, that I went down to kind of part-time with SPO. I would do some speaking on the side as well to kind of help add a little bit of resources. And we had some other kind of county services that our family qualified for because of adoption and foster care.
Yeah.
So that helped to kind of round the whole thing out. But it was really a fascinating moment where Jesus reminded me, and I remember it very clearly kind of in prayer, that my job wasn't to work full time. My job was to provide for my family. And I had to like shed that idea that to be valuable as a man, as a dad, as a husband, that I had to, or not even as a dad and as a husband, but just as a man, that my value so often came from what I produced and my title and what I had accomplished. And if you only work half time, you're kind of like Mr. Mom half time or whatever, Mr. Dad. Yeah. And then the other time you're like doing your thing. The Lord had to, said your job isn't to work full time. Why has that ever been a requirement?
Yeah.
But your job is to provide. And so are you providing for your family? And the answer was yeah.
Yeah.
So and then this freedom came that I'm free as long as I'm providing, and my wife and I are providing for our family, to respond to how the Lord may direct me. And that was a really important turning point. And that was about 5 years ago. And I've gone up a few hours from half time, but basically I'm still about half time with SPO. And we knew we needed to get our kids through high school. And there was like a 10-year window. Like, I need to be more present at home. I need to support my wife. We have a bunch of kind of challenges with our kids. And it's going to take the two of us investing in that. And then we'll figure out work stuff later, like beyond high school or whatever. But for now, that's kind of what the Lord invited us into. And this is crazy. It was our 15th wedding anniversary, and we went to see freaking Hunger Games 2 or something.
Very life-changing film.
It was. What's her name? Katniss?
Yeah.
Right, Katniss. My wife was like, she would hate this if I'm telling a story, but
no one's listening.
That's right. She was so inspired, like, by Katniss's willingness to like give her life for this cause,
Yeah.
She's like, that's what I want to, it really spoke to her. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, whatever it is, I want to give my whole life to it. And we both sort of sat there eating like Mexican food and chips afterwards. And we're in this small little Missouri town with the theater that had like six movies or whatever. And there we were after Hunger Games 2. And Jesus said, I want to invite you to re-examine how you approach work and to kind of drop your addiction to it and drop your attachment to it. And you're not defined by what you do. You're going to provide for your family, and I'm going to work through you in that, but you got to let it go, because that's not that's not the goal. And so that was really powerful, and has been kind of the paradigm that how we've viewed work since then.
Yeah.
It's not that work isn't the goal, but to provide for our family is, whatever that may whatever that may look like.
Yeah, I've struggled with that a little bit too, because you know, like we talked about, like at Franciscan, I'm seeing all these people that I want to model my life after, that I want to, you know, and I see the sacrifice and the, you know, the effort and the, you know, the giving of your whole life for a cause. And yeah, it can something that I've been trying to work through a lot recently is trying to work through those feelings of guilt. And especially, I mean, this is probably just like distinctly, you know, problems of people just entering their 30s, right? But it's like the guilt of like, well, I'm not the type of parent that I perceived my parents to be, or I'm not the type of church minister that I'm perceiving the people I used to look up to, or that I still look up to are, and that, and sometimes we can even get, even though we talk so much against, you know, the kind of mom sacrifice game that people play, where it's like, you won't believe how overextended we are, right? And it's like you take this pride in being extremely overextended and exhausted. Like, you know, we make fun of that, but I think there's like a ministry version of that, where it's like, if I'm not sacrificing more, if there aren't more people in my home with problems, if I'm not having more people over for dinner, if I'm not extremely overworked by ministry, then am I doing, you know, good ministry? Instead of, you know, you're basing your effectiveness on some infatuated goal of what ministry should look like, instead of just like you're saying, like does Jesus want you to, how does Jesus want you to be successful in this? And what kind of ministry is he calling you to?
Yeah. And like, just to like make a really fine point, or kind of a practical application, for me, my work week was basically 9 to 2, Monday through Thursday. And so anything on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or anything before 9 or after 2, I'm off limits. Like, that's like, this is my work. And it was really, that was hard, because you know how it goes.
Yeah.
There's emails and there's calls and, hey, can you make this meeting? And what about this? And no, you know, and so we had to get really kind of shrewd about what that looked like. And it was just so good to kind of begin to free me from the identity that I gained in an unhealthy way from it.
Yeah.
And I remember, again, the Lord kind of asked me a question. The question was, Ryan, what are you most eager to tell others about yourself? And what I realized was I was just always eager to kind of tell people that I was in ministry, or I was doing campus ministry, and there's always this kind of associated like affirmation and, oh, that's awesome. I love that you're doing that. And I couldn't wait for people to ask.
Yeah.
And the Lord said, whatever you're most, and again, I don't think this is like capital T truth, but the sense was, whatever you're most eager to tell others about yourself is where you may be finding your identity. And that was really powerful for me. And again, so I think the whole experience has been experiencing this call and then sorting it out after, you know, because I didn't have any examples of it. I didn't, like you said, I didn't really even know where to turn. And I was in kind of you know, I was kind of this conservative Christian Catholic guy, but I was in this sort of liberal kind of Catholic parish, and I didn't know which way was up at all. And it just took all of these years to kind of keep sorting it out. But it was because of a pretty profound sense, though. Like, when the Lord spoke to me in Atlanta, it was very clear, like, this is what the Lord wanted me to do. And so I want to be faithful to that, but there's not a one size fits all. So I try to be faithful to that original call, and at the same time be nimble and flexible, and to grow, you know, throughout these last number of years. And I think there's going to be a bunch of other twists and turns to come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so crazy how, you know, I think a lot of people have heard this maybe, but maybe some people haven't, but like the whole notion that the devil's not going to necessarily tempt you with something blatantly evil. He's going to tempt you with more, with a disproportionate good. That, like, when he took Jesus up on top of, when he showed Jesus like the whole world, he's like, I'll give you all of it. Just do, like, sacrifice this thing that seems small, and I'll give you all of it. And I've been realizing that more and more, that like, especially for people who are called to work in the church, that the devil isn't going to tempt you with, some people are probably tempted by really awful things, or we all are, but the devil more so tempts you by disproportionate attention to something that's a good thing. Like one of the things early on that I had to get better about was the time I spent with other people. Because if someone comes into my office, I've just always been this way. Like, time slips away. Like, I will spend. I could be like about to eat for the first time in 5 days, but when someone comes in and starts talking about something that's on their heart or something, like I turn on. Like, it just all is all in on that person, and so that was something that I felt often was this huge temptation to something that seemed really good. It's like, well, like, people are crying, like, we're praying with each other, like, this is how do you just say, hey, I don't have time? And so it took me a while. Like, I used to always just like, no, I'm never gonna be like, I don't have time, you know. But it's like it was learning the having the boundaries and limits. Like, okay, 3 hours is probably we should start capping these.
But don't you find too, though, that people actually, like, it can usually work. Like, I've found that if you set the boundaries, that people, if it's important enough to them and it's important enough to you, you can usually figure something out.
Yeah.
And so depending on, I mean, we tend to, you can fill up as much time as is available with whatever. And if you're sort of like, hey, here are the 3 times a week I can meet, usually that person can, it can work out. That's what I have found. And that surprised me, because I was fearful of the same thing. Like, well, if I'm only working like, 18 hours a week or whatever it ends up being, 20 hours a week, well, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to accomplish and meet with and do what I need to do. But amazingly, the Lord worked within those constraints. You probably experience this too, like in a creative sense, like the way that constraints actually can help create a better product than just everything's wide open, you know? And I don't know how that all works, but that's been my experience, that constraints help.
Yeah.
And we ought to put some, maybe even artificial constraints in, just to make things go, keep things moving, and give things edges. And, that's how, inertia and friction works. They need an edge to grab onto. And it's been true. It's been great.
Yeah. What's for someone who doesn't necessarily feel the call or the need to go part-time, I get the sense that someone could probably learn a lot from, like you're saying, like trying something like that, or like artificially, putting constraints, or like what have been some of the things that you've learned, or some of the things that you think are transferable to other people working in the church who might be, maybe they're in their 10th year and they're like, this is, my wife is telling me this is not feasible. They're discerning like getting out because it's just getting out of hand. Or maybe they're in their first year. I remember, when our first year of ministry, it was just like, I had no boundaries of when I was coming home. I mean, I was spending, 60 or 70 hours up at work all the time just because, not being prudent with my time. But what are some of the things you've learned that you feel like could help people make, go the distance?
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish, is it a time issue or is it a money issue? Like, if they're experiencing the pinch, let's say in their marriage or in their family life, is it because of time, or is it because of money, or is it both? Money's a different story. We could address that in a second, but I think if it's in terms of time, I think having first of all, figuring out in the schedule what is non-negotiable. And I'm guessing there's probably only a handful of things, 2, 3, 4, 5 things a week that are like non-negotiable. And so starting there, but then after that, figuring out hopefully with a very honest and open conversation with your spouse, let's say if you're married, about what are their non-negotiables as well. So you marry work non-negotiables with your family non-negotiables, And then you kind of sort out the rest and realize that you probably don't need to be at everything.
Yeah.
And it might actually be a really good thing if you weren't. And if you started to look at what it would mean to actually leverage your leadership for the sake of raising up others and doing that in time that works for you, so that somebody else covers this thing or covers that, So I guess what I'm saying is this is a really solvable thing for people. It's just that we don't often realize the power we have over what we say yes to and what we say no to.
Yeah.
And that most pastors, most employers are really willing to be flexible. If you're doing good work,
Yeah.
they're going to work with you to the degree that you're getting the job done and it works for your family. I think any employer would say, I want this to work for you, work for us, and work for your family. So let's figure out. It's just people don't have that conversation. They just default into, I'll basically do everything.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't work, and you know that.
Yeah.
So I think it's starting with non-negotiables from the family and the work side, and then working towards a schedule. And then, you got to have some accountability and figure out some ways to. I mean, I remember my wife would be so frustrated. Like I would get home, one, I'd be late, and two, I would not only be late, but I'd be late in the garage on the phone because I couldn't go into the home with a call. She would kill me, but she would open the door and look out in the garage like, what the,
I've done that.
Get in here. Isn't that terrible? What are we doing?
I'm like walking around the neighborhood. She's like seeing me walking down the neighborhood. She's like, how long have you been here? I was just walking up and down the street.
Right. Or I'll park like down the street, like, like the Comcast guy does. He's like waiting for the time to show up and then he arrives. I'm like parking, like, what is this creeper doing? It's my neighborhood. But anyway,
your wife goes to the grocery store and sees you parked 2 blocks down. Totally. She's like, "Oh, you've been."
Oh, and she would not have any time for that. So anyway, and good for her.
What were were there any things when you had to make that transition to part-time? Were there any little things just at work, like little things with email or little things with coworkers? Was there any small thing? Like you kind of mentioned one, but like a small tweak that you were, any other ones that you were surprised worked so well and like kind of clear things up, made things really efficient? Because I think for a lot of people listening to this, if you're in ministry, these types of experiments, you don't think about it. Like before, when I felt really overworked, and I used to say with everyone, "Oh, youth ministers have to work 70 hours a week. Like that's just a thing." I just hadn't tried the experiment of setting times to go home every day and setting times that I'm in. I just hadn't tried. I was like, no, there's no way it would work. And then once you do that, all this other fluff kind of, you just realize, wow, I didn't realize an hour and a half lunch actually is probably a little too long, or you just start realizing those things. So were there any little things that were big, like aha moments, like, wow, I didn't believe that in a ministry context that would work with my coworkers or things like that?
Yeah. There were a bunch of different things. One was actually coming into that. Well, so I had this realization. Again, this is for me when I was working part-time. But like, let's say you would go to you'd have an hour-long meeting. Well, for me, that was like the equivalent of a 2-hour meeting, or like an hour and a half lunch was like a 3-hour lunch. So I had to immediately kind of recalibrate what was a reasonable amount of time for me to be a part of something. Yeah. So what ended up happening a lot, because I was a part of a leadership team, and thankfully my supervisor would say, well, you don't have to be, because I would say, I can't take 4 hours today to be in this leadership team meeting, because that's like an 8-hour day for you guys. So could I just show up at the beginning, deal with the stuff that needs my input in a particular way? I'll review the notes at the end and give you any more feedback. And they'd say, yeah, so it'd be like a 30-minute thing or a 45-minute thing. Well, that was the difference between a 4-hour meeting, like a 45-minute thing. Yeah. And so I always had to keep that idea in mind. Now, that doesn't always work if you're full time. But what does work, I think, is speaking up and being willing to kind of challenge the way that things are set up and ask, is this the most efficient way we could handle this?
Yeah.
Because I'm a people pleaser to the core, and it had to really test me because I wasn't going to be able to succeed unless I put some things into practice to kind of help. And so rather than scheduling like an hour-long meeting to default, my default was 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And again, you can get more than enough done if you have an idea that we've got 10 minutes, 5 minutes, you can get what you need done.
Yeah.
But I think in ministry there's just this sense of no boundaries and everything is good. And gosh, so I guess what I found was I was able to basically do my job in about half the time.
Yeah.
And what does that say? And so that was a great realization. And then there's a bunch of little like tools, but I found this great tool called You Can Book Me.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about you, but do you use that?
I've used it before. I keep telling myself I need to go back into it and figure out how to use it in my work life.
It's so great.
Tell people what
what it is. You Can Book Me. I think it's YCBM youcanbookme.me. And I don't know about you, but like in ministry, it's always about lining up schedules.
Yeah.
Like getting time with somebody is so hard. Well, what you do is you put the times you're available to meet. Like for me, it was like 9 to 2, Monday through Thursday. And then it also blocks off your scheduled meetings. So it just shows in 30-minute increments when you're available. And so, hey, can we get together next week? Here's my availability, grab a time. And just that one little change, and because I'm scheduling, 5 to 8 different meetings every week with a variety of people around the country.
Yeah.
And just, I could nail those just like that, rather than all the back and forth, either on the phone or text or email.
Yeah.
That one tool has really saved me. The other thing I would say is when you have a limited amount of time, you got to get really clear on what's most important and go like, what do I have to get done today?
Yeah.
And if you took that attitude, even if it was 4 days a week or 5 days a week, what if you got 5 really crucial things done this week? Everyone would go, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Because most weeks I almost feel like I get nothing important done, much less 5.
Yeah.
But that's only just deciding I'm going to do one super important. And so I had to do that. So that's really helped teach me something too, just about focusing on what is going to provide the most value and help move the needle the most in my responsibilities. If I got that done today, or if I got those 3 things done this week, what would that be?
Yeah.
Again, we know these things, but because I was working part-time, it was like do or die with that.
What's your position is content director at SPO?
Yeah.
What is that specifically involved with, or like, that's content?
Yeah. So we have like a content, or we have like a curriculum.
Yeah.
For all of our staff, all of our students.
Yeah.
In terms of like for our staff, it's basically how to do their job, and the theological and practical, the theological kind of training, but also the practical kind of hands-on training. So I'm in charge of overseeing and developing and refining our training curriculum for our staff. And we have similar processes for programs and resources for our students. And so I oversee that department, and I've got a guy who's primarily doing the student stuff.
Do you mean staff as in like, I don't know how to say this, like in SPO's organization, or do you mean staff that are out on college campuses?
Well, it's all one thing, meaning any missionary who's employed by SPO and they're on a campus, they're considered part of SPO staff.
Okay.
So there's like, let's say 120 missionaries in the field. And so basically for the 120 missionaries in the field, I'm in charge of the content or the curriculum, the training curriculum for them.
Yeah. that's something we're thinking about a lot at our parish, and just I'm thinking about a lot is like I'm starting to now in my 30s like understand these things that have just been around for a long time, that when you're younger you're just like, oh, this is stupid, but like the employee handbook type thing, I mean, like I know that's
right.
I know that's not what this is, but like this idea of, and I think I also was struck by Life Teen missionaries when they would do they had like for a long time, I don't know if they still have this, but like the rule of life. And like when I was at Cove Crest, we were there one year where they let us go do Liturgy of the Hours every morning. And so they would do Liturgy of the Hours, but they would read from like just one part of the rule of life. And it was soaked in scripture. It wasn't like make sure to turn in your expense reports or something, like it was just very like some of the cultural values and stuff. Is that kind of,
That's
I mean,
beautiful.
I know you have the training curriculum to get to onboard someone, but is it kind of like this, here's what our culture is, here's what we're about, here's what being a missionary in SPO is?
Yeah, I mean, that comes out through, we usually have a mid-year staff retreat. And so there's lots of themes that we work in that context. But we also have a kind of a formation curriculum for our students. And so we have students and staff who are living in household, and they're also going through kind of a spiritual formation process as well. So that's a lot of what kind of governs the rule of life, if you will, for SPO missionaries and students who are involved in formation and household.
Yeah.
Not unlike Franciscan.
Yeah.
In terms of whatever that kind of way of life would look like in community, as a college student.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, shifting gears real quick, there were other things we wanted to talk about, but I keep blanking on, I feel like, we've talked about some awesome, I've just kind of followed my interest in this and like tried to pick your brain, but are there any other things that you wanted to bring up or, wanted the good people at home to hear about?
The one thing that we didn't talk a whole lot about was the kind of foster care and adoption, and that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But
I've told you, right, that my wife and I have been, my wife, for as long as I've known her, she has brought up foster care. Like, there's no one in her life that has done it. There's no foster care and adoption. She's always brought it up. And it seems like every year, like the first year we knew each other, it was like she mentioned it once. The second year we knew each other, it was like twice. It just, every year has become, again, it just gets brought up. And then that Mark Wahlberg film released.
Instant Family.
Yeah. So it's been something and then we had a professor, Dr. James Pauly, was fostered and I think adopted as well. And then, so it just kind of has come up. It's just kind of like, I can't seem to get away from it. It just keeps coming up. And then it was partially why this video, like it was one of the first times I saw someone make, a pretty strong statement about like, if we're going to be really pro-life, like you said in the video, like put your money where your mouth is. Like, are we ready, or is there anyone ready to do this type of thing? So it's an interesting topic that like my wife and I are trying to pray through and take slowly, but it just keeps coming up. And so anyway, sorry, just to say that, like,
well, yeah, I mean, here's my basic take on it. I used the word solvable earlier, like our schedules are solvable. This is not the same kind of thing, but like foster care is a solvable humanitarian crisis. Like it's something that if the church decided to take care of every kid in foster care, there's way more happy, healthy, holy Catholic pro-life families than there are kids who are looking for homes.
Yeah.
And by an order of magnitude of 10, or whatever. Now, some local areas might have smaller Catholic community. I mean, it's not even a Catholic community. I just mean like the Christian church at large can solve it. And what we're seeing, actually, I was really inspired to think this way, because there are a lot of kind of evangelical Protestant churches who in certain communities have basically wiped out the need. And they've basically just been able to take care of, let's say, in a small town or a county in, Tennessee. The 42 kids in foster care are taken care of.
Dang.
And, these 8 churches partnered up and, got 85 people licensed, and they're just ready should things come.
Wow.
Like, isn't that how it should be? Like and yet it's just not, because we haven't put our minds and our hearts to figuring that problem out. And so it's certainly not a call for everybody, but I think it's a call for a lot more than are currently aware of it or hearing it. And as I thought about, or as sort of we looked at, like, the specter of a Trump presidency, and I'll tell you, that was as hard as anything for me to swallow. I don't want to get political right now, but but I thought, and I didn't vote for the guy, but anyway, so then he started, like, racking up Supreme Court judges. It wasn't just going to be one; now it was going to be 2, and I'm like, oh my gosh, And so, like, if the court is swinging in a more conservative direction, maybe Roe v. Wade is overturned.
Yeah.
And that's what got the wheels turning in my mind and heart. Well,
yeah.
Okay, well, what would that actually mean if there's less access to abortion, which is what we all want in the pro-life movement? We want less access. In fact, we want no legal access to abortion if possible.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're going to have no more crisis pregnancies.
Yeah.
It just means you're going to have more crisis pregnancies that will likely go to term. And then what's that going to mean? And crisis pregnancies often become crisis families. Not always, but oftentimes. And crisis families need the support of foster and adoptive families to help them navigate the journey.
Yeah.
And so it just sort of made sense, which is why I put the video together the way I did. But mostly it was to put a spotlight on something that we could get really tangible. Well, I think our families, our Catholic families, are some of the richest places on earth,
Yeah.
And I would love for more people who are in need to experience the grace and the goodness of a healthy, holy, happy Catholic family life.
Yeah.
And we're often so kind of consumed just with what's going on between our 4 walls. It's hard to kind of look outside, but what we found is that our 4 walls are stronger. It's a better environment the more open we are to people outside of it. And it actually has made things easier when we've brought maybe kids in distressed realities into our home. And that's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But that's what we've experienced. And I mean, it hasn't been without its challenges. I mean, it's been a really difficult process becoming, doing foster care. And, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I'm so grateful that the Lord called us into that. And we had kind of the grace to respond. And, it's been awesome.
How long are kids normally in? Like, how does that work? I think for a lot of people, they just don't even. I mean, they kind of have an idea of adoption, but like foster care is something that's like less understood. I think, at least for me, like I didn't really understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the basic idea is that there are kids everywhere who experience, let's say, abuse or neglect, or their home is not deemed safe or, a good place for them to be. And so the local county or government pulls them out of those unsafe places and looks for a safe place for them to live temporarily. And that's the whole idea, first and foremost. It's meant to be temporary.
Yeah.
So, because family reunification is always the goal for foster care.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes family reunification isn't possible. And so if it isn't, then they look for a permanent home. So if the family doesn't work, or if like a relative of that family doesn't work, then they usually look at the foster family and say, would you be open to adopting?
Yeah.
And if they have both, if they're licensed as foster parents and licensed as adoptive parents, they could say yes. And that's what happened with us. Each of our 4 sons, so we had like 13 kids come through the home in about 2 years, and 4 of them stuck around.
Wow. And
that's because we were licensed as foster and adoptive homes.
Yeah.
Home.
How?
So yeah, it's a temporary solution to help kids, help families get their feet back on the ground.
Yeah.
And kids to be in a safe place.
How long on average are foster kids? Like, is it always that quick, or I did know. I had a friend in high school who was with foster parents, and he was there for maybe 2 or 3 years, and so I'm not sure what the length is. Or
yeah, well, it depends on the state or the county. So we were in Arizona when we were licensed foster parents, and Arizona did, I think, a pretty good job of moving quickly towards permanency, which means they had like a 15-month window that they want kids, once they enter the system, they want to have some kind of permanent resolution within 15 months.
Wow.
And that's great for families. That's great for the kids, because a lot of times you can know pretty quickly, our family's going to sort it out or not.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then they want to move towards permanency. So for each of our kids, we went from kind of foster care to adoption in kind of 15 to 20 months.
Wow.
And that all happened like concurrently. So we went from 0 to 4 kids in about 18 months. And then based on when they entered into the home, they were adopted, that much longer after.
Wow.
So yeah, we went from 0 to 4 in 4 kids in about 2 years, and
Dang.
It was nuts.
So is that a challenge with kids, coming in and out so quickly on the other kids that you have adopted? Is that kind of like I don't know.
Yeah.
What are the ages of, what are kind of like the average ages of a lot of these kids?
You mean any kid in foster care, or
sure, yeah.
You mean our kids?
Well, I guess both. Because I'm just imagining the horrible, awful things that our own kids say. I can't imagine like my 3-year-old being like, well, it's just, hopefully you get lucky and our parents keep you, like that kind of stuff. With so many kids coming in and out, I'd be so scared of like, please don't say anything that's gonna just like damage this poor kid who's with us for 6 months or 10 months or.
Yeah, well, if I'm honest, I'm probably more worried about my behavior than my kids' behavior, right?
Yeah,
because it's hard, but no. So it's anything from 1 day old to 17 years and 364 days old.
Yeah,
just depends. But for us, we all of our placements were kind of under. Really, most of them were under 1 years. Well, no, it was kind of half was like under 1. And the other half was like 1 to 5, and so they were mostly younger kids.
Yeah.
The 3 of the 4 that we adopted came into our home under 6 months. In fact, my youngest son, Adam, he came to our home when he was 3 days old, and that was kind of a funny story. We had 3 kids, and my wife was like, Ryan, I really would love to have another placement. I'm like, my head's spinning, and okay, 4, we just kind of got used to 3. We're kind of working this out. And so we went out to eat that night. It was a Sunday night, and we said, okay, let's legit like pray about this week, and we'll make a decision a week from now. Okay. Well, Sunday goes by, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I come home, and I walk in the front door through the living room and kind of look down, and there's this child I had never seen before in like a car seat. And I didn't think much of it, and then walked to the bedroom, and then it hit me like, oh my gosh, Jill, whoa, what? Who's that? And she's like, I'm so sorry. I tried to call you, but you didn't pick up. And I'm like, I didn't pick up. She's like, I just couldn't say no, And so that's Adam. But that's just my wife. She was just like, bring it on.
Yeah.
And that was, I love him to death. I mean, that was one of the best decisions she ever made. And it wasn't because I was comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was ready for it, but was it the right thing to do? And has God worked through that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I don't know, it's one of those things. Again, not everybody is called, but what if more people, especially, now here's the thing, especially like good, like big, happy, healthy, holy Catholic families.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of environment that you can absorb someone into.
Yeah.
Our challenge was we didn't have this sort of stable culture. And so we had kind of a chaos culture because all the kids came from this background or that background, or this difficulty matches with this challenge. And, and we were just trying to figure it all out. Well, it was pretty chaotic and still is. But what if you've got like a big homeschool family? Like I've seen so many kids in foster care kind of come into that environment and just get swept up into it in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's actually a lot of those families who think it's not for us.
Yeah.
But I think it's precisely those families who ought to think about the gift of their family life as being a benefit to others who are looking for just that, who are looking for a safe, happy, healthy place to be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I see it. And I think this is something that the church could solve in a local area if we had our minds right about doing it and our hearts right, and we just got people positioned to help make it happen. And that's what I'd love to see.
Man, yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, like, we talk so much about evangelization and putting on these ministries and small groups and programs and endeavors at our parishes, but I wrote an article kind of tongue-in-cheek saying I have the best youth ministry program in the world. I have the perfect youth ministry model. And I just like talked about, but basically I was saying like my family is the perfect youth ministry model, like the best relational ministry, right? For the rest of their lives, like providing everything with them, spending tons of time with them, doing all the teaching myself, all that. And, when you think about that, that's kind of what, to bring this full circle, that's what brought me into ministry, was this idea of using our family to evangelize, to welcome people into. So it's really cool.
Right.
Like, I think more people should discern that. How would someone, how do you suggest people start discerning that if they're hearing this and they're like, it would be cool if our parish, or if a few of us, or me and my wife, started looking into doing this? How would you recommend? Would you recommend like finding other people at your parish and saying, hey, like, I heard about this. Like, what if we started talking about this, or getting support from their parish, or just doing it on their own at first, discerning a little bit, or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly they ought to be, number one, talking to their spouse and talking with their spouse and praying, but practically they need to find somebody they know, either call them up on the phone or meet with them in person, like if they're not in town, but connect with somebody who's doing it to learn more about the experience, and just to hear kind of all sides of what the challenges, the demands, the blessings, the opportunities are. So I think that was the thing we didn't do enough. That's why I stress it. We didn't do enough of like actually hearing the reality of it. It was just kind of this beautiful ideal. Yeah. And I don't know where we were of the legit challenges of it.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you are bringing kids who have experienced some amount of trauma into your home. And the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. Mm. So you're bringing people who've been hurt. It's like you try to like soothe a wounded animal. Like you got to be careful with that, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. And it's through no fault of their own. but they're gonna act out in ways that are connected to their trauma.
Yeah.
So that will be a part of the narrative in your home in some way. And you're also not just opening your heart to these kids. If you're being honest and you're doing it right, you're opening your heart to these families that they come from, and a willingness to engage with pretty messy situations.
Yeah.
And likely, if you ended up adopting, perhaps open adoptions, because it all started off open. And especially if the kid's old enough, they're going to know their birth family, and how could you take them away from me? I mean, it's really complicated.
Yeah.
So I think talking to somebody who has experience that you trust, or they have a good relationship with, that they can be honest with you and you can ask honest questions, obviously without divulging things about those kids, because that's their story.
Yeah.
But talking to people, praying, and just learning in your local area, like how would somebody in my town get certified? And there's all sorts of options online, you just go to your local county website,
Yeah.
and look up foster care, and you can get more information there.
Are there any other resources online that you found particularly helpful, or any other resources?
What I could say nothing's coming right to mind. I mean, there are a bunch that come to mind. One, I'll send you something. You could throw it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Like a website. Because actually, you know what?
Any links? Yeah.
I think, so there's the blog post that connected to the video.
Okay.
That you could throw in the show notes, because there's some links there, if I'm not mistaken, to get people to help people go in the right direction. And everything I've just sort of described is also kind of written on that page as well.
Cool. Awesome. That's inspiring, Ryan. Like, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your video. And thanks for just coming on. This has been we struggled to find a date. I should have clicked your "you can book me." I should have been using that more to schedule this. But
yeah, I think I sent you one of those.
A long time ago. So, yeah. So thanks for coming on, man.
Cool, man.
I'm really inspired by you and your story. And man, next time you're in Dallas, we gotta have you on live.
Dude, I would love that. I mean, that would be it's the next best thing to. I feel like I'm there, but to really be there would be awesome.
Yeah, we got to have.
And
I
got to try this Topo Chico.
Oh yeah, man.
I've never even had one of those, so we'll have to share one.
It's sweeping the nation. We got plenty of it here too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Where can people go, Ryan, to find you online, or if they want to get in touch with you, or just your kind of stuff, your website or stuff like that?
Yeah, RyanO'Hara.org. It's probably the best place. RyanO'Hara.org.
Okay, cool.
And there's social links there as well.
Sweet. Awesome, Ryan. Thanks for being on.
You bet. Thanks, Edmund. It's been great.